thing that I actually wanted to mention is that we are in the 10th decade for the UN decade for people of African descent. And the Canadian government is exceptional in this case as a settler land, that they actually acknowledge the decade and promise to live up to the promises of the decade, which is recognition, development, and justice. And so I am a UN fellow and for the 2020 and for the UN Human Rights Commission office. They created this program, and actually this program is funded by Russia of all places. And Russia is the only one who donated fundings for the decade of people of African descent. And Canada and all, the United States didn't even acknowledge the decade. England, finally, London, a friend of mine, Iffy, who was the fellow with me, convinced the London mayors and the assembly to recognize the decade in London, but they're building on into the UK. And so that is something that I'm actually working on. My fellow Canadian, and all of them are Somalis, and we ended up uniquely the only 3 Somali women in this UN fellow representing Canada, beside 2 other Black fellows from Quebec, Montreal. And so what we are working on is really for the federal government. We try to connect with the Black parliamentarian, but they haven't really responded yet, to not just recognize the decade, but actually have tangible, actionable policies and legislations around the decade, because the decade is supposed to be addressing where the government lacks, and around justice when it comes to policing issues, around development, which is economic investment into the Black community. And we're also working on, we're trying to push for, and with other allies, to recognize Black Canadian as a distinct category, because that makes a tremendous difference at the federal level, because visible minority no longer really address Black issues. Black Canadian, Black issues are very distinct issues that is not the same as Indo-Pakistani issues or other issues. And we don't want to be lumped together, because our history, or the history of Black people in this continent, is as old as the transatlantic slave trade and beyond, right? And so we wanted to, the same way that we have Indigenous identity as a distinct identity and woman as a distinct identity, it means that policies and fundings become allocated from the start, from the get-go, to those issues. And so we're trying to campaign and work on having Black people as a distinct category, and to have something similar to the PAC and the unit that exists at the municipal level, to have, because there's an anti-racism directorate at the federal level, to actually have a unit that is exclusively focusing on anti-Black racism. But we'll see what happens.